The combat instructor's pride. Zara Vax stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Defense Academy, her iridescent scales shifting colors under the artificial lighting. Her golden eyes narrowed as she watched the latest batch of recruits file into the training arena. Among them were 5 humans, their soft skin and fragile bodies marking them as clearly inferior in her mind. The Nexarian combat instructor had earned her reputation through decades of rigorous training and countless victories in the field. Her species was known throughout the galaxy for their enhanced strength, regenerative abilities, and tactical prowess. To her, humans were nothing more than amusing pets that the Alliance had inexplicably accepted into their ranks. Instructor Vax, her assistant, a fellow Nexarian named Krell, approached with a data pad. The new human recruit's scores just came in. Lieutenant James Harrison has broken several of our previous records. Zara's scales flickered with irritation. Impossible. Run the tests again. Already did. 3 times. Krell's tone carried a note of respect that further annoyed her. His combat simulation scores are unprecedented for any species, let alone a human. The object of their discussion was easy to spot among the recruits. Lieutenant James Harrison stood slightly apart from the others, his quiet confidence evident in his stance. Unlike the other humans who seemed eager to prove themselves, he carried himself with an understated grace that Zara found oddly unsettling. Begin the assessment, she commanded, her voice carrying through the arena's communication system. Show me what these humans can do. The training sequence initiated, filling the arena with holographic opponents and obstacles. Zara watched with clinical detachment as most recruits performed as expected, the non-humans demonstrating their natural advantages, the humans relying on their crude technology to compensate for their weaknesses. Then Harrison moved. His movements defied her expectations. Where other humans telegraphed their intentions, his actions flowed with liquid precision. He anticipated attacks before they came, used his environment with tactical brilliance, and demonstrated a level of spatial awareness that rivaled her own species. Impossible, she muttered, her scales shifting to a deep blue of confusion. The assessment continued, but Zara's attention remained fixed on Harrison. He wasn't just surviving, he was excelling, adapting to each new challenge with remarkable ingenuity. When the final scores appeared, his performance had indeed broken several academy records. Lieutenant Harrison, she called out as the recruits lined up for inspection. Step forward. He approached with measured steps, his green eyes meeting her golden ones without hesitation. Most species found it difficult to hold a Nexarian's gaze, their natural intimidation factor usually forcing others to look away. But Harrison showed no such weakness. You've achieved impressive scores, she said, her tone carefully neutral. For a human. Thank you, instructor, he replied, his voice carrying neither pride nor offense at her qualified praise. I look forward to learning from you. Something in his tone caught her attention. There was no trace of the usual human bravado, no desperate need to prove himself. Instead, she sensed a genuine desire to learn, to improve, to understand. We shall see, she responded, dismissing him with a gesture. As he returned to the line, she found herself studying him with growing curiosity. The following weeks proved both frustrating and fascinating for Zara. Harrison consistently defied her expectations, approaching each training session with a combination of humility and determination that she had never encountered before. He absorbed her teachings quickly, adapted her techniques to work with human physiology, and most irritatingly, showed no sign of being intimidated by her. During one particularly challenging session, she decided to push him to his limits. The combat simulation was set well above the standard difficulty, with parameters that would challenge even a seasoned Nexarian warrior. Begin sequence, she commanded, expecting to finally see him fail. Harrison moved through the course like water flowing around obstacles. Where brute force wouldn't work, he found alternative solutions. When faced with opponents too strong to defeat directly, he used their strength against them. His performance was a masterclass in adaptation and innovation. "Enough," she called out, ending the simulation. "Lieutenant Harrison, explain your strategy." He stood before her, breathing heavily but composed. "You taught us that victory comes from understanding both our strengths and limitations, instructor. I simply applied that principle." His words were her own, but he had interpreted them in a way she hadn't anticipated. Where she had meant to teach acceptance of natural hierarchies, he had found a path to transcend them. As she dismissed the class, Zara found herself facing an uncomfortable reality. This human wasn't just challenging her preconceptions, he was dismantling them piece by piece. Her carefully constructed worldview, built on the assumption of Nexarian superiority, was showing its first cracks. That evening, as she reviewed the day's training footage, she couldn't help but focus on Harrison's performances. There was something compelling about the way he approached challenges, something that spoke to the warrior in her. Perhaps, she mused to herself, her scales shifting to the contemplative shade of twilight, I have more to learn about humans than I thought. Breaking barriers. Zara found herself spending more time in the Academy's archives, studying footage of human combat techniques. She told herself it was purely professional interest, a need to understand their peculiar methods better. Yet she kept returning to Harrison's training sessions, analyzing his movements with growing fascination. "You've been watching those recordings for hours," Krell observed one evening, his scales flickering with amusement. "The human intrigues you." "He presents an anomaly," Zara replied, her own scales shifting defensively. "Nothing more." But she couldn't dismiss the nagging feeling that there was something more to Lieutenant Harrison than mere physical prowess. During training sessions, she began to notice subtle details, the way he helped struggling recruits, his ability to unite diverse species in team exercises, and most remarkably, how he seemed to understand her teaching methods better than any previous student. One morning, she arrived at the training arena earlier than usual, only to find Harrison already there. He moved through a series of fluid exercises that combined Nexarian combat forms with what appeared to be ancient human martial arts. His movements were precise, graceful, and somehow familiar. "Those are advanced techniques," she said, stepping from the shadows. "Where did you learn them?" Harrison paused, showing no surprise at her presence. "I studied the historical archives. Your species' traditional combat forms share interesting parallels with Earth's ancient warriors." "You studied our history?" The concept seemed absurd. Most species barely understood Nexarian culture, let alone took the time to study it. "Know your teacher, know your path," he quoted, using an old Nexarian proverb that few outsiders would recognize. Something shifted in Zara's perception. She moved to the training mat, her scales rippling with challenge. "Show me." What followed was unlike any training session she had ever experienced. They moved together in a dance of combat, each testing the other's boundaries. Harrison matched her speed with precision, countered her strength with technique, and anticipated her strategies with uncanny insight. For the first time in her career, Zara found herself truly engaging with a human as an equal. Their sparring session attracted an audience of early rising recruits, who watched in amazement as instructor and student pushed each other to new limits. "You fight like a Nexarian," she said during a brief pause, her tone carrying unexpected respect. "And you move like you've studied human martial arts," he replied with a slight smile. The observation startled her. She had indeed been incorporating elements of human combat techniques into her own style, almost unconsciously. The realization both disturbed and intrigued her. Their training sessions became more frequent, and gradually, the lines between teacher and student began to blur. Harrison's insights forced her to question long-held assumptions about human capabilities. His approach to combat wasn't just about physical prowess, it demonstrated a deep understanding of strategy, adaptation, and the psychology of conflict. During one particularly intense session, Harrison executed a move that caught her completely off guard, sending her to the mat. The training room fell silent, recruits holding their breath in anticipation of her reaction. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Zara laughed. "Well done, Lieutenant," she said, accepting his offered hand. The touch sent an unexpected current through her scales, causing them to shimmer with colors she hadn't displayed in years. The incident became a turning point in their relationship. Zara found herself sharing more of her knowledge, not just about combat but about Nexarian culture and philosophy. In return, Harrison offered insights into human perspectives that challenged and expanded her worldview. "Your species survives through adaptation," she observed during one of their discussions. "We Nexarians rely on our natural strengths." "Perhaps true strength lies in combining both approaches," Harrison suggested. "Natural ability enhanced by adaptability." The idea resonated with her more deeply than she cared to admit. She began to notice changes in her teaching methods, incorporating more flexibility and encouraging innovation among all her students. The results were remarkable: improved performance across all species, better team coordination, and a new sense of unity among the recruits. But not everyone appreciated these changes. Traditional Nexarian instructors viewed her evolving methods with suspicion. Rumors spread through the academy about her growing closeness to a human student. "You're becoming soft," her superior, Commander Vex, warned during a performance review. "These humans are corrupting our training standards." Zara felt her scales bristle with indignation. "Our results speak for themselves. The current class shows the highest performance metrics in academy history." "Numbers don't tell the whole story," Vex replied coldly. "Remember your heritage, Instructor Vax. We are Nexarian warriors, not human sympathizers." The warning should have concerned her more than it did. Instead, Zara found herself increasingly drawn to the training arena, to the challenges and discoveries that each session with Harrison brought. She was changing, evolving in ways she hadn't thought possible, and for the first time in her life, she welcomed that change. One evening, as they finished a particularly grueling training session, Harrison asked her a question that caught her off guard. "Why did you really agree to train humans, Instructor?" Zara considered the question carefully, her scales shifting through thoughtful shades. "Initially, to prove our superiority," she admitted. "Now, I'm not so sure anymore." Their eyes met in the dimmed lighting of the training arena, and Zara realized that more than just her teaching methods had changed. She had begun to see humans, to see Harrison, in a completely new light. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. The joint mission. The emergency alert echoed through the academy's halls during a routine training session. Commander Vex's holographic image appeared before the assembled instructors, his scales a dark shade of urgency. "We've lost contact with Research Station Omega," he announced. "Our latest intelligence suggests it's been compromised by Ravager pirates. We need a small team to infiltrate and assess the situation." Zara noticed Harrison's subtle shift in posture. Research Station Omega was notorious for its classified weapons research, and its location in the asteroid belt made it particularly vulnerable to attacks. "Instructor Vex continued, his tone carrying a challenge. "Since you've been so invested in proving the effectiveness of your new training methods, perhaps you'd like to lead this mission?" Before she could respond, Harrison stepped forward. "Permission to join the team, Commander." The room fell silent. It was unprecedented for a human trainee to volunteer for such a high-risk mission. Vex's scales flickered with barely concealed disdain. "Absolutely not," he began, but Zara cut him off. "I request Lieutenant Harrison as my mission partner," she stated firmly. "Our combined skills are precisely what this operation requires." Hours later, as their stealth shuttle approached the research station, Zara questioned her decision. Not because she doubted Harrison's abilities, but because of the unfamiliar emotions his presence stirred in her. "Station's environmental systems are still functional," Harrison reported, studying the sensor readings. "But I'm detecting irregular heat signatures in the main laboratory section." The pirates will be after the prototype weapons, Zara said, her scales shifting to match the shuttle's stealth coating. We need to move fast. They docked at an emergency airlock, their movements synchronized from countless training sessions. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated, creating an eerie sensation as they made their way through the darkened corridors. Movement ahead, Harrison whispered, his modified combat suit adapting to the low light conditions. 3 signatures, probably pirates. Zara nodded, impressed by how quickly he had mastered Nexarian sensor technology. They moved as one, their different physiologies complementing each other perfectly. Where her natural strength could overpower enemies, his agility allowed him to outmaneuver them. The first group of pirates fell without raising an alarm. But as they approached the main laboratory, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. Quantum lock, Zara hissed, examining the sealed door. Breaking it will alert every pirate on the station. Harrison studied the security panel, his expression thoughtful. Maybe we don't need to break it. He pulled out a small device he had been working on during training sessions. This combines Nexarian phase technology with human encryption algorithms. Theoretically, it should. The door slid open silently. Impossible, Zara breathed, her scales shifting to colors of amazement. Improbable, Harrison corrected with a slight smile. There's a difference. Inside the lab, they found what they were looking for, and more. The pirates hadn't just stolen prototype weapons, they were modifying them with illegal tech that could devastate entire planets. We need to destroy these, Harrison said, already working on the weapon systems. The risk is too high. An explosion rocked the station before Zara could respond. Alarms blared as the pirates discovered their presence. They found themselves trapped in the lab, with enemy forces approaching from both directions. Trust me? Harrison asked, grabbing her hand. Always, she replied without hesitation, surprising herself with the truth in that single word. What followed was a battle unlike any in her experience. They moved together with perfect coordination, their fighting styles merged into something entirely new. Harrison's innovative tactics combined with her raw power created an unstoppable force. But the pirates had numbers on their side. As they fought their way toward the extraction point, a stray blast caught Harrison in the shoulder. Zara felt an unfamiliar surge of fear as he stumbled. Leave me, he gasped. Complete the mission. Instead, she pulled him closer, her scales glowing with protective fury. We finish this together. Using herself as a shield, she half-carried him through the firefight. Her species' natural armor deflected most hits, but some got through, leaving burning marks across her scales. She barely felt the pain, focused only on protecting Harrison and reaching their ship. They made it, but just barely. As their shuttle detached from the station, Harrison activated the charges they had planted. The laboratory section imploded, taking the dangerous weapons and most of the pirate force with it. In the shuttle's small medical bay, Zara treated Harrison's wounds with uncharacteristic gentleness. That was foolish, she scolded, but her scales betrayed her concern with soft, worried colors. Says the one who risked everything to save a mere human, he replied, wincing as she applied healing gel to his shoulder. You are not mere anything, she said quietly, her hand lingering on his skin. You never were. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. The barriers of species and rank seemed to dissolve, leaving only two beings who had found something unexpected in each other. The mission debriefing would raise eyebrows throughout the academy. Commander Vex would question her judgment in destroying the prototypes rather than recovering them. But in that moment, as Harrison's hand covered hers, Zara knew she had made the right choice. We make a good team, Harrison said softly. Yes, she agreed, her scales shimmering with new possibilities. We do. Hearts of Warriors. News of the research station Omega mission spread through the academy like wildfire. The successful partnership between a Nexarian instructor and a human trainee became the subject of intense debate. While some saw it as a triumph of interspecies cooperation, others viewed it as a threat to traditional values. Zara noticed the changing attitudes immediately. Her fellow instructors kept their distance, their scales radiating disapproval. Even Krell, her longtime assistant, seemed uncomfortable around her now. "The Council of Elders has requested a formal review of your teaching methods," Commander Vex informed her one morning, his scales gleaming with satisfaction. "They're particularly interested in your personal relationship with Lieutenant Harrison." "My relationship with the lieutenant is professional," Zara replied, though her scales flickered with colors that suggested otherwise. "Is it?" Vex challenged. "Because your behavior suggests something far more inappropriate." Before she could respond, an alert flashed across their communication screens. A training accident in the advanced combat arena. Harrison's name appeared in the report. Zara reached the arena in record time, her heart pounding. She found Harrison picking himself up from the mat, surrounded by a group of Nexarian trainees. Their scales showed colors of aggression poorly disguised as concern. "Training malfunction," one of them explained, not meeting her eyes. "The gravity controls just slipped." But Zara saw the truth in Harrison's controlled expression and the way he favored his left side. This was no accident. It was a message, to both of them. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, she examined his injuries. "This has to stop," she said, applying healing gel to a nasty bruise on his ribs. "It won't," Harrison replied calmly. "Not until they accept that change is inevitable." "They could have killed you," her scales flashed with anger and something deeper, fear of losing him. "But they didn't," he caught her hand, his touch sending ripples of color across her scales. "Because they underestimate humans, just like you once did." His words hit home. She had indeed underestimated humans, underestimated him. Now, she couldn't imagine her life without his presence, his insights, his touch. "The council will try to separate us," she warned, but made no move to pull her hand away. "Let them try," he smiled, that quiet confidence she had first noticed still unwavering. "We've faced worse odds." The following days brought new challenges. Anonymous complaints appeared in their personnel files. Training schedules were mysteriously altered to keep them apart. Even some of Harrison's fellow humans began to distance themselves, uncomfortable with his close association with a Nexarian. But for every act of opposition, there were small victories. Other instructors began quietly adopting some of their combined teaching methods. Mixed-species training groups formed spontaneously, inspired by their example. Young recruits from both species sought them out for guidance. During one evening training session, as they moved through their now familiar combat dance, Zara realized something had fundamentally changed. Their touches lingered longer than necessary, their bodies moved with an intimacy that went beyond mere combat training. "We're being watched," Harrison murmured during a close grapple, nodding toward the observation deck where Commander Vex stood with several council members. "Let them watch," Zara replied, her scales shimmering with defiance. "Let them see what we can achieve together." Their demonstration became more than just combat training. It became a statement, a perfect blend of Nexarian power and human adaptability, of tradition and innovation. They moved as one being, their different physiologies creating something beautiful and unprecedented. The council members left without comment, but the message had been sent. This was more than just a professional partnership. It was a glimpse of what the future could be. That night, in her quarters, they finally addressed what had been growing between them. "This could cost you everything," Harrison said softly, tracing the patterns on her scales. "Your position, your status." "Some things are worth the risk," she replied, her scales glowing with colors she had never shown before, colors of love. Their first kiss was like nothing either had experienced. Her scales shifted through a rainbow of emotions as his hands explored their texture. Their different biologies should have made it impossible, but somehow it felt perfectly natural. The next morning, they entered the training arena together, no longer hiding their connection. The reactions were immediate: shock, disapproval, curiosity, and from some, admiration. "They'll never fully accept us," Harrison said as they prepared for their first class. "Perhaps not," Zara agreed, her scales now permanently carrying traces of the colors he brought out in her. "But we can show them a better way." Their classes became more popular than ever, despite official disapproval. Students witnessed not just expert combat training, but a living example of how differences could become strengths. When Commander Vex finally called them in for a formal reprimand, they faced him together. Her scales were steady, showing none of the submission expected of a Nexarian before authority. "You disappoint me, Instructor Vex," Vex said, his scales dark with displeasure. "You were once our finest example of Nexarian superiority." "I still am," she replied, standing closer to Harrison. "I'm just not limited by it anymore." As they left Vex's office, Harrison took her hand openly, ignoring the stares of passing recruits and instructors. "Ready for whatever comes next." Zara's scales rippled with determination and joy. "With you? Always. Beyond prejudice." The summons to appear before the full council of elders came as no surprise. Zara and Harrison had known this day was approaching ever since their relationship became public. The great hall of the academy was packed with observers, instructors, students, and officials from both species, all eager to witness this unprecedented hearing. The council members sat in their elevated seats, their scales collectively radiating disapproval. Commander Vex stood before them, presenting his case against the controversial pair. "This goes beyond mere impropriety," he declared. "Their relationship undermines the very foundations of our training principles. They promote dangerous ideas about species equality that could weaken our warriors." Zara felt Harrison's calm presence beside her, giving her strength. Her scales, once constantly shifting with concern about others' opinions, now displayed steady colors of confidence and purpose. "Instructor Vax," the head elder addressed her, "you were once considered our finest example of Nexarian excellence. How do you defend these actions?" Zara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I defend them with results. Since implementing our combined teaching methods, graduate performance has improved by 40% across all species. Our latest class showed the highest success rate in Academy history." "Numbers can be manipulated," Vex interrupted. "What about our traditions? Our pride?" "Pride?" Harrison spoke up, his quiet voice carrying through the hall. "With respect, true pride comes from growth, not stagnation. Your traditions are powerful, but they can be enhanced, not diminished, by embracing new perspectives." His words caused a stir among the younger council members. Zara noticed their scales showing colors of consideration rather than outright rejection. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than words," she suggested. "Allow us to show you what we've achieved." The council agreed, and the hall was quickly transformed into a training arena. What followed was not just a display of combat skills, but a testimony to what could be achieved when different species worked together in true harmony. Zara and Harrison moved as one, their fighting styles perfectly merged. Where her Nexarian strength provided power, his human adaptability created opportunities. Their demonstration incorporated traditional Nexarian forms with innovative human techniques, creating something entirely new yet respectful of its origins. The audience watched in stunned silence as they executed increasingly complex maneuvers. Even the most hardened traditionalists couldn't deny the beauty and effectiveness of their combined style. But the real surprise came when they invited their students to join them. Young Nexarians and humans, along with other species, stepped forward to demonstrate what they had learned. Each pair showed how their natural differences created advantages rather than obstacles. "This is the future," Zara declared, her scales glowing with pride as she watched her students. "Not the dominance of one species over another, but the strength we can find together. The council chambers erupted in discussion. The younger members were clearly impressed, while the older ones struggled with the implications of what they'd witnessed. Finally, the head elder raised his hand for silence. What you have shown us is unexpected. But change is not always negative. Perhaps it is time for the Academy to evolve. The decision that followed would reshape the Academy's future. Instead of punishment, Zara and Harrison were tasked with developing a new training program that would incorporate both their methods. Their relationship was officially recognized, setting a precedent for future interspecies partnerships. Months later, as they watched a new class of mixed-species recruits training together, Harrison turned to Zara with a smile. "Remember when you thought humans were just pets?" Her scales shimmered with amusement and love. "I was wrong about many things. But I was right about one." "What's that?" "That you would teach me something important." She took his hand, her scales glowing with the special colors that only he could bring out. "You taught me that true strength isn't about physical power or species superiority. It's about having the courage to change, to grow, to love despite differences." The Academy had changed too. Where once there were rigid divisions between species, now there was collaboration. Traditional Nexarian training halls now hosted joint classes where different species learned from each other's strengths. Even Commander Vex had begun to adapt, though he still grumbled about modern methods. Their story became legend at the Academy, not just as the first officially recognized human Nexarian pair, but as pioneers who showed that diversity could be a source of strength. Young recruits would look at them with wonder, seeing not just an instructor and her former student, but a living example of how prejudice could be overcome. "What's next for us?" Harrison asked one evening as they watched the twin suns set from their shared quarters. Zara's scales rippled with possibilities. "There are other academies, other worlds still bound by old prejudices. Perhaps it's time to expand our horizons." "Together?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Always," she replied, her scales glowing with the confidence of absolute certainty. "We still have much to teach, and learn, from each other." As they stood together, watching the stars emerge, Zara reflected on her journey. She had started as a proud Nexarian warrior who saw humans as inferior beings. Now she understood that true strength came not from maintaining barriers, but from having the courage to break them down. Their love hadn't just changed them, it had opened the door for others to follow. Across the Academy, new partnerships were forming, new methods were being developed, and old prejudices were slowly fading away. In the end, the greatest lesson wasn't about combat techniques or training methods. It was about the power of connection, how two beings from different worlds could come together and create something greater than themselves. Their story would be told for generations, not as a tale of a human taming a Nexarian, but of two warriors who dared to show the galaxy a better way.